Welcome to the Fairhope City Council meeting. We're going to go ahead and start with Dr. Darren McClellan, of Senior Pastor at Fairhope United Methodist Church, with the opening prayer followed by the pledge.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, on this beginning of Holy Week, we're mindful that this has not always been our best week for politics. There's been deceit, there's been betrayal, there's been denial. And we find ourselves as humanity acknowledging the need for your grace. There are days in which very soon the innocent will be handed over as guilty, and we find ourselves among them. And God, as we think about the needs and the brokenness of our world, as we consider our hearts broken over the events in Ukraine, God, we continue to see such violence in our world, and we ask again for your mercy. Give us your Spirit, we pray, as we recognize our own sense of helplessness in these things. But then let us also be encouraged, full of hope, admiring the joy and the possibility of doing the work to which we are called here. While we may feel helpless in other parts of the world, we know that we have an opportunity for the citizens of this community. And so we give of ourselves today, tonight, and forevermore, to do the good work that you've given us to do, to be stewards of this community, and we ask your Spirit's help in doing so this day. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, Council. Before we get started, I do have a couple of adjustments. We would like to pull item number 24 from the agenda tonight, and then adding, I guess, 25 would slide up to 24, and then adding item number 25 would like to amend the agenda to add procurement of the Surumi, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Surumi duplex cutter package for the wastewater department to be purchased from J.H. Wright and Associates, and this is for $28,190 for a temporary lift station out at 104, the Publix at 104 and 181. So
I move to amend the agenda as stated.
all right, we've got a motion and a second to move the agenda. Any further discussion? All right. Hearing, Council, if you would, let's go ahead and take a vote on that. All in favor of amending the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. First item up is the approval of the minutes of the 28th of March regular council meeting and the work session as well.
So moved.
We've got a motion
Second.
and a second. Any other comment on that? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Mayor, your report.
So tonight I just have a couple things, but the first thing that I wanted to do was thank the council for amending the agenda. I know that we are very diligent about trying to get that agenda set and not add items to it. Unfortunately, things here in Fairhope are moving a little bit faster than the council meetings happen. So thank you for adding that to the agenda, that one item. I appreciate it. Thank you. The second thing I'd like to do is recognize our telecommunications department. You know, we always hear the term first responders, and when we hear that, we automatically think of police officers, firefighters, and utility workers. But typically, telecommunications is your first responders. They're the first people that you're going to talk to in the event of emergency, and just probably the unsung heroes of all the emergencies we have here in Fairhope. So I just want to take this opportunity to read a proclamation, recognize the folks who are here, and thank them for their service to the city and our citizens. So this is proclamation, National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that requires police, fire, or emergency medical services. And whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the City of Fairhope Emergency Communications Center and Public Safety Telecommunications are first and the most critical contact our citizens have in emergency situations. Whereas public safety telecommunications are the single vital link for our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them with information, and ensuring their safety. Whereas public safety telecommunicators of the City of Fairhope have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. And whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their jobs in the past year. And now, therefore, I be it resolved, Sherry Sullivan, Mayor of the City of Fairhope, do hereby proclaim April 10th through the 16th as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in Fairhope in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. And at this time, I'd like to recognize the folks who are here. First and foremost, we have, of course, John Hamrick with us, John, and Larry Sledge, who serves as the supervisor over the telecommunications department, and Keisha Johnson. Y'all just want to raise your hand or come up, whichever you prefer. Misty Thomason, Jeneth Wright, Taylor Aguilard, Reba Combs, and Chris Weinberg and Laura Booth. I think that's everybody, right? And I think there's a few. Huh? Yeah, there's a few more because there's a few of them who are not here. So thank you, ladies, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Can I give this one, y'all? Who wants? Keisha, want it? And the other thing I just wanted to mention is we have Easter sunrise service this week at 6:30, Sunday at the pier. So I hope everybody will attend. It's always a great service, a lot of folks that are there. And also, if you missed it, you missed a great event for the library this past weekend at Bay Breeze Cafe here in town. It's their first efforts in fundraising for their second floor addition, and just was a great event, a beautiful weekend, and a great job by the library staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Next item up is public participation. If you wish to address the council on agenda items 5 through 25, please come forward to the podium. You've got 3 minutes. Just need your name and address. Okay, floor is open. All right. All right, seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close the floor. And next item is council comments. Councilman Burrell?
No comments.
Councilman Martin?
No comments, thank you.
Councilman Robinson?
Thank y'all for saving me this time, but I don't have any comment either.
Okay, and I have no comments. We'll go ahead and get started with the meeting. First item up is the final adoption ordinance. This is proposed amendment to change and alter the City of Fairhope zoning ordinance to revise Article 5, Section B, the Central Business District, and add a subsection for rooftop terraces. And this was introduced in the March 28th meeting. Hunter,
Thank you.
fire away.
And we talked about this 2 weeks ago and in the work session, so I'm going to breeze through. If there's any questions or the public has any questions, I'll be happy to address those. This was, in essence, to allow within the CBD and on property zone B2 allowance of a rooftop terrace on buildings that are 3 stories. That's at the gist of what we're trying to accomplish here. This did come through the Planning Commission with some recommendations. We re-advertised some of the things that we did change. The council, based on the council comments, what can be built on that 3rd floor. The Planning Commission recommended it has to be 33%. The City Council reduced that to 25% of the coverage. Made sure the elevator shafts were not viewable from the sidewalks in the public right-of-ways adjacent to the building at the ground level, and then put in some guidelines on what was allowed and how they were allowed for temporary structures on the rooftop, such as tents, awnings, umbrellas, things like that. Put in guidelines of when and how that could be allowed. That was the gist of the questions. We've kind of read through these things, so I won't do that again. We didn't have any comments last week. We talked in the work session, there's no comment. So with that said, we also did have a definition of rooftop terrace. With that said, staff does recommend the adoption of the proposed zoning amendment for rooftop terrace.
All right, council members, do y'all have any questions or comments for Hunter? Any discussion? We have talked about this several times and covered it again in the work session.
I move for final adoption.
All right, we've got a motion and a second for final adoption. Any further comment, Councilman Robinson?
I do
All right.
not.
All right, City Clerk, if you will call the question.
Place 1.
Aye.
Place 2.
Aye.
Council President.
Aye.
Place 4.
Aye.
All right. Passes, ordinance passes, so thank you. Next item up is also a final adoption of an ordinance, proposed amendment to the existing PUD known as Reserve at Fairhope. Dominion Senior Living of Fairhope LLC. Property is 16.62 acres. Is located at the southwest, should be the southwest corner of the intersection of Greeno Road and Volanta Avenue. This was also introduced at the last council meeting. Hunter?
Thank you. Again, I'll kind of breeze through this a little bit. This PUD that has been approved, received multiple obviously approval and coming back with an amendment. The property is on the screen, the aerial, it was an undeveloped piece of property. The gist of what is recommended in this approval is a redesign of the layout of the drainage and the 2-unit cottages, keeping the same unit count. The ponds being turned to wet ponds instead of dry ponds, and design changed a little bit. And then the addition of a professional office area, so that could be an additional unit. No specific plans on that, so what the app developer has proposed is their own uses. For clarification, those are on the screen. For clarification, just in case anybody is curious, there is clinic in there. Our zoning ordinance requires clinic to go to Board of Adjustment for approval. It's not a use by right, but a use subject to special conditions within that appeal. So that would still be the case in this sense. The height limit of that building, the professional building, will be 30 feet to match B2 zoning, where the PUD of the larger building was granted an eve height of 34 feet. To kind of flip back, these are probably the easiest plans to read. This was the site plan as approved in the current PUD, not adding additional units or buildings, but rearranging those to reduce the roads. It resulted in this layout, and you can see the dry ponds are shown at the east and west of the site, here and here. Those were realigned and redesigned, and is shown in blue, and will be wet ponds and more of an amenity than just a empty hole, if you will. The project was reviewed by the Planning Commission, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago. They did recommend approval with a vote of 8-0, and there were with 4 conditions of approval. And the first one has already been resolved, but we left it on here. The landscaping, including overstory trees, shall be planted in the 20-foot landscape buffer adjacent to Greeno. A visual landscape buffer shall be planted along the western property to provide a buffer to those residents on Audubon Place, and shall be maintained by the owner of the reserves at Fairhope. Once planted, the buffer shall remain natural, except for the allowance of plant material to be installed to maintain a visual buffer. Number 3, the maximum building height of the professional office building shall be 30 feet. And number 4, a mandatory site plan review shall be required for the professional office building when and if developed. One of the uses allowed in there is to leave that space to remain green space. So there's no guarantee that'll ever be developed, but that final condition is that site of the professional office will at least come to City Council for approval as a site plan review. So if y'all have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
All right, any questions for Hunter? Again, we had discussion on this in the work session. All right, no questions? No questions for Trey?
Move for
or
final
developer?
adoption.
All right, we got a motion
Second.
and a second for final adoption. Any further comment? All right, Clerk, if you'll call the question.
Place 1.
Aye.
Place 2.
Aye.
Council President.
Aye.
Place 4.
Aye.
All right, ordinance passes. Thank you. Item number 7, well, I feel like we've seen this a lot, but we still need to introduce this ordinance?
Has to be introduced.
Okay. Would
I'll
someone like to
introduce
introduce this ordinance? All right. Item number 7 is an ordinance to repeal and replace ordinance 1747 and to approve the revised lease to the Fairhope Center for the Writing Arts, declaring that certain real property of the city of Fairhope, Writer's Cottage at 9 North Section Street, for the Fairhope Center for Writing Arts is not needed for public or municipal purposes in response to an offer to lease a property to be used only as a center for writing arts in accordance with uses normally incident to and hereto and for no other purpose. It is hereby declared that to be in the best interest of the public in the city of Fairhope, Alabama, to lease said real property to the Fairhope Center for the Writing Arts with a lease term of 5 years with an option to renew for additional 5 years. Renewal shall only be valid on approval by the city council. All right, council, any discussion on this? All right, I think we've already talked about it several times, so if y'all would like to, we'll go ahead and let that one lay over till next council meeting. All right, item number 8 is a site plan review and approval, and this is a request of KWH Properties LLC, owner for the site plan approval of Polo Crossing, a 5-unit multiple occupancy project. Property is approximately 1.77 acres and is located on the eastern side of Greeno Road, Highway 98, and lies south of Wolf Bayview Funeral Home. It was voted by the city Planning Commission to be recommended to City Council, and staff recommends approval with the 4 listed conditions. Hunter, if you would.
Thank you. So I'll jump right into, as you said, this does lie just south of Wolf Bayview Funeral Home. It's on the screen here. This is a property that has been zoned B2 for quite some time, but has just had a single-family home on it that has now been demolished and looking for a redevelopment. This did have a 5-unit MOP that did make it through Planning Commission. While busy, this site plan kind of shows everything, and we can flip through some others. This is 5 units of a commercial development. The building is here with 2 restaurant uses with drive-throughs on the north and south ends of the building, with 3 retail spaces sandwiched between. The 2 drive-throughs kind of went through many revisions through Planning Commission and staff reviews. And the 2 drive-throughs were kind of at the root of some of those concerns. But for the most part, when our reviews have been met with good faith and redesign, I will get to one last little thing at the end that under ALDOT review that we did discuss in the work session. But from here, I can kind of walk you through the project. Drainage, utilities, things like that were reviewed in the multiple occupancy project, so we did not include a lot of those within the site plan review. So just in case, we have reviewed those and did vet those solutions. One of the things that changed, I'll go back to the site plan here. There was a few very large oak trees on this site, here, and one in this area. So that dictated preserving those trees dictated a lot of the arrangement and site layout. The developer has moved everything to the north just a bit, and it's easier to see on a landscape plan as I flip over to this. The residential to the south and east are required buffers when you have B2 next to residential. So including the existing fence, they have provided the required landscape buffer. The parking drive aisle is pavers in some areas, and this area is impervious surface. The landscape strip of 20 feet adjacent to Greeno Road is provided, and the landscape within that has been reviewed by our horticulturist and has approved that. I can show you kind of the dumpster location. There was a few questions we had kind of in this highlighted area where we felt the landscape plans didn't quite match the level of the rest of the site. So we have asked for some of the parking buffer and landscape plans to be revised before we see the building permit. Parking is meeting that. The required spaces are 49. The proposed are 54, including one bike rack. As we discussed, a lot of those spaces are compact spaces. Those are actually a requirement of the zoning code, and something we may need to consider. If it is something you would like to consider for this case, we can look at removing those. Those might require a redesign. The applicant may or may not be willing to entertain that. But I do think part of that conversation in the work session is compact car spacing these days are used by golf carts. It's hard to get illegal to get a golf cart down Greeno Road. So is that the appropriate use of those? Something we probably need to look at our zoning ordinance to see where those would be appropriate. But for this, they are in accordance with the regulations as they stand today. The building elevation is shown on the screen. The materials for the building are primarily wood siding, hardy board kind of falls within that group, stone veneers, standing seam metal roof, and aluminum windows and doors. The pedestrian connectivity was something we really were concerned about because there is an existing multi-use sidewalk in the right-of-way. And the highlighted area is the safe passage to get across the drive aisles. They have provided an outdoor seating and picnic area in that area and bike parking as well. The traffic was really the only lingering thing when we were during the Planning Commission meeting. At the bottom of the screen is the recommendations you see in a traffic study. And as part of that study, the traffic engineer recommended a 445-foot turn lane northbound. So that, before you get to this, that would allow stacking. If traffic overfilled this parking area, that would allow for stacking to happen without blocking traffic on 98. AlDOT has preliminarily looked at it, and within 220 feet, we hit the intersection of Windsor Drive. So it's typically not a good idea to have that turn lane extending south of Windsor Drive. We don't know what the ultimate solution is. With AlDOT, they're looking at that and what solutions may be available. Some of those, for example, there's many others that I can't think of, but for example, could be a reduction in the building size, because what you're looking at is how many trips are generated for that requirement. If you reduce the number of square footage, you reduce the trip generation. It could be a relocation of the ingress and egress. So what we've added since the Planning Commission is a condition of approval that those improvements will be approved by AlDOT and installed at the developer's expense. And if there are tweaks to the site plan that are not substantial in nature, we can approve those with staff. But do want to note that any substantial deviations from this site plan may have to be approved through Planning Commission and the City Council. The Planning Commission did vote with a recommendation of 6 votes in favor and 0 opposed to recommend approval of SR 2201 with 4 conditions of approval. The irrigation shall be revised and located within the subject property. Parking shall meet the impervious requirements as applicable. A revised landscape plan to include screening for dumpster enclosure and additional plantings between parking areas and detention areas shall be provided and approved by the planning director. And number 4, any improvements required by AlDOT shall be installed at the developer's expense prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy. So I am here if you have questions. I believe I did see the engineer, the developer is also here if you have questions for them.
All right, council, any questions? We discussed this pretty thoroughly in the work session, but any questions for Hunter, anything you'd like to reiterate? Or
I have one quick question. So Hunter, in the list of recommendations, there is a number 4, which states the conditions of the associated multiple occupancy project along with the above conditions shall be satisfied prior to issuance of a building permit. And I don't see that on the screen now. Instead, it talks about prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
And it could have been can you reread that for me?
It says the fourth recommendation, it says the conditions of the associated multiple occupancy project, case SD 22.10, along with the above conditions, shall be satisfied prior to issuance of a building permit.
But you could take a long time to put in a turn lane for Aldott, and you're not gonna issue a building permit until that's,
That's right.
Complete.
We would not do that.
Yeah.
So the MOP is its own
that would
case.
be,
We did take that out. That has its own case, so we wouldn't do the certificate of
Okay.
occupancy. until
So,
those are
but if
done.
we approve something that says, subject to recommendations, and there's one recommendation written in our package, there's another one on the screen, we need to be clear that when we adopt it, we have the right recommendation as the fourth recommendation. Otherwise, it's going to be, potential for a.
Yes,
a mess.
yes, as amended by, and when we say that, what we're presenting to you tonight is the way should
You
be-
want it the
should
way
be
it's
the
written
minutes
in
of
red.
record.
You want it the way it is on the screen, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
And that's any project, Councilman Conyers, that's any project that requires improvements, we do not give CO until those are done, if
Right.
that's a condition. There's others
but to
that-
not issue a building permit, I mean, they can do these things concurrently.
And
I'm just saying
we always
the
debate
CO
that. We could say, hey, until it's resolved, we
Yeah.
don't issue a building permit whatsoever.
So what's the point of right?
There's and this kind of gets back to that chicken or the egg. We're always the tip of the spear. And those outside agencies, Aldott Corps of Engineers, we can't control their timeline. So it is always an option to say, hey, no building permit until it's resolved. It just may take 6 months. So at least in this situation, we feel like there's an option to move forward. And it can be, if we release a building permit and they go start work without Aldott's approval, they're doing it at their own risk. So if they go in and put curb and gutter in for a drive-in location of an ingress egress without that approval, and Aldott says, no, it needs to be moved 50 feet, that is a risk.
Right,
It's a risk on our part as well.
I don't see it that way.
yeah.
I think if we have this condition and we have talked, when we look at building permit, we'll also be checking into what's your status with Aldott. And what we typically do in that situation,
So what you're saying is you would not give the building permit if they don't have the permission from Aldott?
Not a certificate of occupancy.
certificate of
until-
occupancy is going to be when, they're going to have a land disturbance permit, and then they'll have a building permit. So when all of that's finished is when we give and built and inspected by building and all the utilities are happy, then that's when the certificate of occupancy comes. So that we're 18 months down the road. When we get the request for a building permit, we make sure Aldott is okay with the location of, it may be that additional turn lanes needed or something, but we typically will make sure at least they're approving the location.
Okay. Councilman, any questions for Hunter, for the developers that are here?
I want to move for approval, subject to the conditions shown on our screen, these 4 conditions. I don't know how you note that, clerk, that not the exact same 4 that's shown in our package.
Okay.
Number 4 is slightly different.
All right, we've got a motion to move forward on approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further questions or conversation for Hunter? All right, Clark, if you will, well, you don't have to call the question on this, do you? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, three ayes, 1 nay, the ayes have it. Thank you, council. Thank you, Hunter. Next item up is the site plan review and approval, request of Robert M. Green Jr., owner, for the site plan approval of Fairhope Urology, a 1-unit project. The property is approximately 1.66 acres and is located on the west side of US Highway 98 south of Hoyle Drive. Hunter, if you will.
Thank you. So good conversation in the the work session, so I'm gonna start off a little different here. And the properties shown on the screen is what the tax map shows today. So that is a culmination of some parcels that do not meet the lots the way they are drawn and approved coming before you. The case we are looking at also had a preliminary plat that clarified the lot lines and the zoning and amended the historic lots of record. So we wound up with 4 lots in this acreage that contain 2 B2 zone lots and 2 R1. The project site plan we're looking at tonight consists of the 2 northernmost lots, one R1 to the west and one B2 to the east, abutting Greeno Road. The right-of-way to the north is Hoyle Lane, which is the right-of-way we looked at within the previous PUD amendment. So the reserves of Fairhope lie to the north of this right-of-way, and the proposed Urology Center lies to the south. Points of clarification: when we talk about opening a right-of-way, the right-of-way here has existed for years. The reserves are paving that right-of-way, and we'll be opening it up as a public road. There is some detention and slowing down of water, I won't even call it detention, in the right-of-way as well. So as a point of clarification, this will not be punching through and opening to adjacent neighborhoods. This will still be, in essence, a dead-end road that only goes into this development. The Urology Center is shown and hatched on the screen. They have the included parking or required parking. And there was also kind of almost a partnership between the project to the north, our right-of-way, and this project, and then the future development that may happen to the south. Water is basically retained in great volume on the reserve project, and then we'll hit a series of step pools that are designed to slow that down before it hits the conveyance system to the west that has created some problems in the past, so we should see an improvement overall. The elevations for the building are shown on the screen. Primarily brick is the exterior material. There is the 20-foot landscape buffer along Greeno, and if we can look at that, the live oaks planted where live oaks are preserved where existing and planted where they're not. Along Greeno Road, the our horticulture supervisor has looked at this and approved all the landscape plans and did give some accolades. There's also a 20-foot undisturbed buffer along the western side of the property in addition to the installed landscapes. So they will have to go in and do some work in this area to create that drainage. So there will be a clearing of some of the landscape that's back there now that's been planted through the years, but 20 feet should remain as a visual barrier and shall be maintained by the owners and any future owner. Green space was met. Again, all the parking was met, all the zoning requirements were met within this site. There was something we had as a condition of approval was if Hoyle happens to not be open or under construction when the urology finishes, because that is something the reserves are building and constructing, then the Urology Center has to have a secondary entrance, temporary, and that can come off live oak, so they did provide that as a condition. The other conditions of approval I'll read: clarify all utility easements that are on private property, screen the transformer pad, and the coordinate site access with Hoyle Avenue improvements to the north, right turn only from Hoyle Avenue. So as part of this project, there will not be any bonds. Basically the reserves are installing all of the public infrastructure that will fall under maintenance bonds. So they will turn those over to the city at some point, but they will need to be coordinated with this project. So that's condition number 3 and why that's on there. The Planning Commission did review this and recommended with a vote of 6-0 to approve SR 2202. y'all have any questions, I also saw the design team and developer on this one as well.
Yeah.
Council, any questions? for
Yeah,
Connie?
you know, once again, I see the fourth condition here is a right turn only, if we can do that. You have to understand, guys, that this is a urology clinic. So the median age for this clinic is gonna be elderly gentlemen. And they're gonna be coming out, and if we don't make sure that they're making a right turn only, I'm afraid that we're putting them in a precarious situation as far as crossing over that lane and making that turn. So we have to make sure when we present this, that we make sure that that turn is there for these citizens. I don't mind, you know, us creating, you know, clinics and medical, it's just, that road, Hoyle, bothers me significantly. I just think it's with the demographic that we're gonna be associated with that, on both sides, it may be a real issue with this, you know, and I'm not claiming that, that bothers me, you know, so if we can't get that, then that's a problem.
If we can't get the right turn?
Yes, because you understand, Jack, that right there, that you
I
got
just want to
traffic
make sure I
coming this way,
understood
you
what
got
were
traffic
describing.
coming this
I
way,
wanna-
they
I
gotta
wanna
come
make sure
across
that you
too.
wanted to leave that in.
Yes, I
as
wanna
opposed
leave
to-
that in, and if we can't do that, then that's a problem, because that's gonna be a problem.
Now, in the work session, council, there was some discussion about leaving the right turn only from Hoyle Lane Avenue in, or accepting what recommendations Aldott made, if Aldott came in and said something other than that, or did not accept that as an option. How do y'all feel about that?
So what do they have to, if you want to go back north on 98, what's your process? I'm just trying to think through this, so people don't say it's a inconvenience. You go right, and then where do you,
Could you connect in through, I mean, I don't know if.
there's really nowhere to,
You have to make a,
to make a U-turn.
You have to make a U.
You're gonna have to go down, go through
Yeah.
your parking lot, behind your building, come out by a Trustmark and make a right.
Yeah, I mean. it's
You want
all-
that?
Yeah, you know, and that's what we did discuss, is at the strictest, if we approach Aldott with this solution, and they say no,
Then
not
it
at this time,
voids the project.
this project, you know, has to come back through and try to amend this and remove that condition or provide alternatives, and that's certainly an option.
Well, I don't want anybody to get hurt.
And I think that's a good question, because when you look at it, as we talked about in the work session, the corridor study in this area is probably warranted, because it's gonna be looking at what are the alternatives, where do you go down and how do you get back north?
Let me ask you, Richard, not to put you on the spot, because I know you hadn't thought about this question today, but, and I don't know if we have enough room there, but, you know, Orange Beach has made everything out of, you know, you come out of any condo on the beach in Orange Beach, and you have to make a right turn, and they've got all these U-turns with lights, but they said that the number of accidents, number of pedestrians that have been hit is way down because of that. You just, in the future, do we have enough room on 98? If Aldott wanted to do that, or if we asked for that, is that even possible?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's called I think a Michigan left turn is what they call it, and that is you take a right, you go down to a signalized crossover, and you do a U-turn and head back the other way. Ultimately, in this case, Aldott is going to dictate the terms of all the access movements at any intersection of their road. So, you know, a lot of times you do see where they limit it to a right in, right out only situation. I reckon the challenge here is that if, you know, if they look, this is a standalone property, and this is their only access point, they may, and since directly across the street, the connection with Dryer has full turning movement, and you can go right, you can go left, you know, you have all your options there. It'll be interesting to see what they recommend. They may say, no, it's not gonna be a limited exchange. It's gonna be-
But if you go down there and do what you're saying, a Michigan U-turn, you can't go anywhere. You go down there, you can't go right and say, go back up to Volanta. You'd have to go
You have to go right.
all the way to Fairhope Avenue and
Right to-
come back behind the shopping center and come back out and then that's that's a horrible left turn right there.
But you do have,
Gayfer?
if Hoyle was right in, right
Yeah,
out.
Gayfer in there.
Gayfer's right
You
there.
want to go back north, you would take a.
Yeah, but
right
Gayford, you can't get back to Valana.
You go down to Gayford.
You go to Gayford, back to Dyer, left again.
Yeah, you'd have to go down to Gayford and then turn off of Gayford and go
Bishop, then back up Dyer.
somewhere.
You can
Yeah,
U-turn
because you
there?
can't make those rights, is what I was saying, from Gayford. You can't get from Gayford back to Valana. Well, you could, but then you'd have to pass the mayor's house down in there and just stop all that. That's way out of the way.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And we do have, there is something else to look at when, and this was way back, Mayor, you might remember some of this, when Aldott was putting in and expanding, and they did a median project and wanted to put a median. A lot of our businesses went out and complained about losing access across that median. This is one particular property that has that, and it says Hoyle shall have that left turn access. And there's an ordinance supporting that. So any solution we have might need to be addressed.
we have an ordinance that says you have to be allowed to make a left turn off of Hoyle.
It was designed, it's specific to the use of the nursery, that the loading and the trucks coming in and out shall be able to use that. That was the access for the loading zone. So, and only reason I bring that up, if this project is in existence, then the nursery's not being used on this one, so.
But in the ordinance, does it say to facilitate that?
It's
I
for
mean, we can't violate
delivery
our own ordinance,
trucks.
and we can repeal it, but.
Yeah, it is for the use of the nursery there. And with them not taking deliveries on this project, I think it's fair. But it does put us in a precarious situation where if we, by condition of approval, and then Aldott not being able to approve that, we ultimately kill this project, then what's left but the last use of a nursery. And then we couldn't prevent a left turn anyway. So, I think in good faith, we will certainly be working with Aldott to do that. That has come up with multiple projects, reserves, but to have at least some flexibility there to not kill the project, and it is my recommendation to have that.
Yeah, I'd hate to kill the project over something that's out of our control somewhat.
Yeah.
What about efforts or opportunities to make the council and planning commission's recommendations known and clear to Aldott when you're going through this process? Is that?
And we stay, I mean, as much as we can, we work with Aldott. We've met with them already about this and looked at what can be done. Does it come from MPO? Do we look at corridor studies that transect city limits? Do we just do it as a Fairhope project? How we accomplish those things, I think it's kind of up in the air, but it's certainly something we need to be looking at, because there are more projects that have been approved, just haven't started construction yet. We've got quite a few across from Atlanta Park that we'll need to be looking at.
I mean, what are the odds that we make our desires known as a council and a city to Aldott, that they use that in determining what they're ultimately going to do?
I think it weighs heavily on their decision, but at the end of the day, their focus is keeping traffic flowing up and down those state highways. So if that benefits in their calculations and their metrics to keep that a left turn and keeping that an open intersection, it kind of puts them in a bad situation on looking at what the city wants versus what's best for what they're in charge of. So, that's a tough one for me to answer.
Right.
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know how to
well,
answer
I
that.
just, really, what I was hoping the answer was is exactly what you said, is at least that they do give some
Absolutely.
consideration and do take it into consideration what we're actually thinking we want.
I think signalization up at Valanta would ease the ability to turn left out of Hoyle, but I think the bigger issue is if you're projecting into the future, if there's something developed down Dyer and you've got traffic coming both ways, but it's kind of hard to.
Yeah. And this is conversations we've been having for a couple of months, and just remember, this is not gonna open up and generate traffic for some time. We still have the opportunities to get those studies done, look at what options we have in front of us.
council, any further question or conversation on this one? I mean, as it stands, we can approve it, well, if we want to take consideration of approval, we can approve it as is recommended with that additional item 4, right turn only out of Hoyle. If we want to add a remark to, to work with AlDOT to what they decide, and there we can. Otherwise, if AlDOT comes up with something different, it will effectively put a halt to this project, and we'll have to come back to the council for further consideration. So would anyone like to make a motion? Would anyone like to discuss this further?
Well, I think it not only affects this project, but it affects the project to the north as well, because anybody that wanted to exit that project on Hoyle Avenue is going to be affected by that turn.
Yeah.
And their
You're
traffic.
talking about a potential medical clinic there and a tremendous number of residents. So it could, if you look at it, it could harm that as well.
That project's already had their traffic study reviewed by AlDOT, and this left turn out of Hoyle was approved by AlDOT. So that doesn't mean a new project can't change things, but that has been reviewed as a part of their,
So AlDOT has reviewed that road with a left turn?
this road was not a part of this project. This is Hoyle Avenue, the improvements were a part
Why
of the
would it
reserve.
about it? Hey.
And they reviewed that, and did say the
I
left
think we
turns.
might be wiser to put it in the hands of the professionals instead of us trying to engineer it here in the council meeting
Yeah.
and make a recommendation to have AlDOT, study it and see what's required as opposed to holding up everything else and putting that last one in. I appreciate your concern for the safety. I think that we do need to be concerned, but I think that it's best to be left up to the
Yeah,
traffic.
no doubt. I mean, if AlDOT has already said that it's okay for a left turn, then
So, well, in that case, would someone like to make a motion subject to what's,
AlDOT.
AlDOT's
Right
AlDOT's
turn only
review?
from Hoyle Avenue as reviewed and approved by AlDOT.
Or not even
No, we're not
that.
saying
Even
that
do
at
it.
all.
It'd be
That's not-
Just take it
a
off?
motion to approve with recommendations 1, 2, and 3 with AlDOT to determine whatever happens after that, right?
Fair enough.
Which is what would happen anyway, right?
Right.
So you don't
That's
really
right.
need to add that language, do you?
And I will say, what happened here during the planning commission, this was a condition that we didn't really debate. We talked about traffic, and then as the motion was made, this verbatim was added in the
at last
motion.
second. Gotcha.
So, I think this whole conversation could have been different if we debated that nuance.
All right.
I want to make a recommendation for approval and accept the 3 recommendations from staff.
All right. We've got a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion, council? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the site plan review and approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? All right, motion passes. Thank you, council, and thank you for talking through that, Hunter and council members. Number 10 is a resolution that public improvements indicated herein for Old Battles Village Phase 4A are hereby accepted for public maintenance, and authorizes Mayor Sherry Sullivan to execute the maintenance agreement between the City of Fairhope and 68V OBV 2020 LLC, the subdivider. Hunter,
Yes, sir.
still here.
This still here.
All right,
Got 2
glad
more.
to have you.
So, based on our conversations in the work session, it is completely feasible to adopt the resolution with a minor tweak, if you see fit. I believe, I'm maybe projecting here, but it wasn't the goal to hold COs or things like that. So what can we do in lieu of that? I believe on tab 10 of your packet, the first page is the resolution.
Adding a hold harmless to that?
Tweaking the language a little bit in the now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Fairhope, Alabama, that the public improvements indicated herein for Old Battles Village Phase 4A are hereby accepted for public maintenance, subject to a hold harmless and indemnification agreement approved by the city attorney. and a bond posted by the quote subdivider unquote. For the Mayor Sherry Sullivan is authorized to execute the maintenance and guarantee agreement between the City of Fairhope and 68B OBV 2020 LLC, the subdivider. If the resolution was amended that way, I believe that's where we get to the goals we talked about in the work session and can be approved.
Council, would anyone
Do you
like
have
to?
that?
I have Marcus's.
Yeah, this is what you and Marcus crafted
Yes.
after the work session, right?
Would someone like to consider making a motion subject to
You're-
that hold harmless and?
I want to, I would like to make the motion to accept the public improvements, subject to the changes to the resolution that were stated by the city planner.
All right, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. A motion and a second. Any further discussion, council?
All I can say is, I wish I'd have been at the baseball field with you instead of the work session when we discussed this item.
Eyes are glazing over.
For the record, it was a 5-4 walk-off win by Jays Dodgers, so just so you know.
All right,
Go blue, huh?
congrats. All right, we've got a motion and a second.
That's for
Any
the
further
amendment.
discussion, council?
That was for the
All right.
amendment, correct?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Hunter, I think this is your last
Yep,
one.
last one.
We'll get you out of here. This is item number
Mandatory J.
11.
Work session.
Yes. Same thing here. We're going to take the hold harmless. Everything is installed. Everything is working great. So just as we talked about, instead of the contractor holding the bond, the subdivider. So real quick, that same paragraph shall read, now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Fairhope that the public improvements indicated herein for Old Battles Village Phase 4A are hereby accepted for public maintenance, subject to the bond posted by the quote subdivider unquote, and authorizes Mayor Sherry Sullivan to execute the maintenance and guarantee agreement between the City of Fairhope and 68B. I'm looking at 4A, so I don't want to quote the rest of that sentence. They might have a different LLC on this one.
Nope,
But
same
that's
one.
the gist.
Same
Okay.
one.
So.
All right, council members, I know we talked this one to death pretty good in work session too, so does anyone wish to make a motion on this item with the amendments that
I
Hunter
move
just
to
read?
adopt the amended resolution as stated by city planner.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Hang on.
And this is for 4B.
Yeah.
Yes.
4B.
Yeah,
For
4B.
4B.
This is 4B, yes.
All right.
Item number 11.
All right, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time tonight. Item number 12 is a resolution that the city council approves the selection of Kimley Horn to perform professional preliminary engineering services for County Road 32 upgrade for the SRF grant for water upgrades on County Road 32 from County Road 33 to Greeno Road, then north to the high school, and hereby authorizes Mayor Sherry Sullivan to negotiate a fee schedule and establish a not-to-exceed limit with this firm. This is one of these projects, we're just trying to get the pre-engineering done so we can have a grant-ready project. And,
So moved.
Second?
we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item number 13, again, one of the same, is that the city council approves the selection of Thompson Engineering LLC to perform professional preliminary engineering services for water and wastewater upgrades in the Fruit and Nut area, and hereby authorizes Mayor Sherry Sullivan to negotiate a fee schedule and establish a not-to-exceed limit with this firm. Again, shovel-ready grant project, just trying to do the pre-engineering. Would anyone like to make a motion?
So
or do-
moved.
All right. Got a motion
Second?
and a second? Any further discussion?
Yep. Are these budgeted upgrades?
These,
Or these are just, these are.
These are not
brand new, These
budgeted.
are not Restore Act upgrades then?
Gas.
No.
Okay.
all right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item number 14 is a resolution that the city of Fairhope hereby declares bid 1-22 Arts Alley Downtown Transit Hub at the request of the staff along with the project architect of record through consultation with the Eastern Shore Metropolitan Planning Organization and the county and ALDOT personnel to be void due to the mandated federal bid law issues. So it's just a recommendation to void the bid on this project. Any questions for Richard? Did he leave? Where's Richard? Oh, there he is, hiding behind the computer. Any questions for Richard on this one?
I mean, are we not supposed to ask, but I gotta ask, what was the bid
What was the
law
issue?
violation? It was an advertising issue? Okay, good. That we can live with.
All right. Any further questions, or would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Do we need to also in the resolution say and then put it back up for a rebid? That's a given?
Yeah. that's a given.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item number 15 is a resolution that the City of Fairhope approves the procurement of fencing installation and gate at Well 3 property on County Road 33 to be purchased from Hagen Fence for the Water Department. 3 quotes were obtained for this procurement, and Hagen Fence was the lowest. Total cost not to exceed the amount of $24,999. Any questions for Jason on this, council? Covered in the work session. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Got a motion to approve? Do I have a second?
Second?
Got a second. All right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item number 16 is a resolution that the City of Fairhope approves the procurement of inventory for 860 Fisher-type HSR regulators for the gas department to be purchased from John H. Carter Company, Inc. as a sole source provider in the state of Alabama. Regulators are exempt from formal bid pursuant to the Code of Alabama. Total cost not to exceed the amount of $51,238.80.
I move to procure the meters.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Jay, we talked about this in work session.
All right. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion
I'm
passes.
opposed to Jack's comment. Does that count?
File a grievance with the clerk. Let's see, next item up was 17, resolution that the City of Fairhope approves the procurement of inventory for 850 meters for the gas department to be purchased from Elster American Meter Company through Ed Young Sales Company as sole source sales representative for Elster. Units must fit into our existing standardized system and are exempt from formal bid pursuant to Code of Alabama. Total cost not to exceed the amount of $107,045. Any questions for Jeremy on this one? Or-
So moved.
Got a
Second.
motion and a second? All right, motion second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 18 is a resolution that the City of Fairhope approves the procurement of 8,000 feet of 6-inch DR11 green stripe pipe for St. Michael Way sewer extension for the Wastewater Department to be purchased from Consolidated Pipe and Supply. Pipes are exempt from formal bidding per the Code of Alabama. Total cost not to exceed the amount of $78,800. Any questions for Jason? Or y'all good? All right, would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion?
And all these were budgeted, by the way. Just
Yes. Thank you for that. All right. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, motion passes. Item 19 is a resolution that Mayor Sherry Sullivan is hereby authorized to execute change order number 2 for bid 29-21 for the Pecan Building Phase 1 East Wing Office remodel for increased cost not to exceed the amount of $2,827.56 and award the change order to Eric Lazary Construction. New total contract will be $296,059.56, but again, just under $2,900 is the only amount we're looking at an increase on.
so moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 20 is a resolution to award bid number 21-22, citywide road repair, resurfacing, and striping project for the Public Works Department to Asphalt Services, Inc., with a total bid proposal not to exceed the amount of $507,916.84 with budget amendments, and that does not include the parking lots, which will be rebid to see if there's an opportunity for some savings there. Council, there was some discussion with this during the work session. I think the project as a whole is about 25 or 26% above budget, but it was determined that that was primarily based on repaving two streets. We were repaving Orange and Pecan from Church Street down to South Mobile, and that's because of all the cuts that were made throughout the year by the gas department as they were upgrading those services. So one of those things, in my opinion at least, it just needs to be done, needs to be repaved, but we had a lot of good conversation about moving forward, putting some items in the budget to capture that moving forward for known projects. But again, council, this is citizens that have got cut up asphalt all through their road, so I know they'd like to see this included in this year's repaving project.
I'd like to make a motion for the citywide road repair.
All right, we've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, as I stated in the work session, I support us fixing the roads, but when we have a $104,000 overrun, I'd like to see where the money's coming from prior to, showing up for the city council meeting. It'd be nice to let us know exactly where it's coming from so that it's not just assumed that we're going to approve a $104,000 increase on an unbudgeted item.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item number 21 is a resolution that Mayor Sherry Sullivan is hereby authorized to execute change order number 1 for bid 24-21 for the Fairhope Docks bulkhead repairs, FEMA 4563 rebid for 46 linear feet of bulkhead and edge dock to be replaced for an increased cost not to exceed the amount of $32,008.80, and award change order number 1 to Asphalt Services. New contract total will be $361,876.57. Richard also pointed out that, FEMA had approved after the fact to pay up to additional 15% more than what they had originally approved. So I just wanted to point that out. Any questions for Richard on this, or would someone like to make a motion?
Richard, does that come out about the same price per linear foot as the original contract? I'm trying to do the math real quick. Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's based upon the quantities already bid, so yes, it's exactly the same cost per linear foot.
All right, excellent, thank you. Which is surprising, actually.
They were willing to agree to it.
Okay, good deal.
Yep, so moved.
All right, got a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
You got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item number 22 is a resolution that the city of Fairhope approves the procurement for the upgrade of the River Mill lift station pumps, controls, and piping on quotation PSC-0222-08A from J.H. Wright and Associates for the Water and Wastewater Department. Authorizes procurement based on Code of Alabama. Total cost not to exceed $76,686, and this will be paid for through our system development charges. So, any questions for Jason on this? Would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Next item up, item number 23 is a resolution that Mayor Sherry Sullivan is hereby authorized to execute an engagement letter with Maynard, Cooper, and Gale, P.C. for professional government affairs services and assistance, as well as assist in several, in special projects and provides strategic consulting advice from time to time for the city of Fairhope, Alabama. This engagement will be for a 6-month period with a not-to-exceed amount of $54,000. And Mayor, would you like to cover? Would you like me to cover? All right.
Basically, most people know that there's a lot of money coming down from the federal government for infrastructure. Some of that ARPA money that we just talked about with the SRF fund with ADM is some of that money. So this will give us the opportunity to work with these folks and be able to identify some of that money, give them a priority list of projects, let them know that we are, what we're looking for money for, whether it be infrastructure or performing arts center, whatever the council, would like to look for money for. Hopefully they'll be able to have their relationships and be able to secure some of those grants for us. So that's what we're looking for.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, do you have any questions for the mayor or any discussion? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Yeah, so I have a couple of questions. So this is a not to exceed 54,000, correct? So he's not on an hourly basis or anything, that's the max. And at any time, we can release this situation if we're not satisfied? All right, very good. And there's nothing that any grants that we can't find, or is there a separation? Is there something that they find?
No. We can still solicit grants on our own as well.
Okay,
I just think that, at the end of the day, you base the value of the services provided based on what they find that we don't find.
right.
Well, and it's knowing the exact wording to use to intrigue whoever it is that's giving the grants to give it to us. And sometimes it's not what you're asking for, it's how you ask for it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's helpful to have.
Yeah, and sometimes you give, like in a grant application, you put the wrong thing, like a job interview.
Right.
You're like, where do you want to be in 5 years? Well, I want to be working for another company after I get experience here. You are not going to get that job.
And I think a good example is a lot of time we think infrastructure, we think utilities, but a lot of times that's economic development. That's other things other than just putting a utility in the ground. So those are some of the things that we're looking for, those opportunities that we might not recognize that he will.
And
but
that's
they will.
exactly what I'm,
And our bandwidth is,
right.
Yes.
And that's what I'm asking. He would
Well,
recognize
because,
it.
this will be something that there'll be a metric to measure success by, so.
Yeah,
we
just
can-
dollars.
Yeah, we can see what's working and what's not.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's hard to say what you would not have received had you gone after it with our grants writer that we
That's
have on
absolutely
retainer.
right.
And but I think that it'll probably show itself. But to another one of your questions, Corey, I did speak to the firm about specifically about hours. And the answer was, they'll be available to us 24/7 whenever we need to call them. And I said, well, that's not fair to you. But of course, then we had the conversation about, of course, we wouldn't necessarily want 5 council members calling us and the mayor asking the same questions and having to reiterate it. And I said, well, I'll tell them that politely, say, look, let's try to use one channel for communication or, 1 or 2 and try to keep from repeating the same questions and same conversations.
I think all lawyers know that they are open and available to their clients anytime they feel like talking.
But you charge them by the hour, and this one didn't have a specified
Yeah.
number of hours that were included.
I think there's a pretty good balance there, for certain.
all right.
Yep.
Any further questions or comments, y'all?
No, I think it was good discussion.
All right.
Duly noted.
All right. Do we have a motion on this yet? I didn't think so. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
We got a motion
I'll second.
and a second. All right. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion passes. Item number 24, original 24 was pulled from the agenda. New item 24 is a resolution that the city of Fairhope accepts a donation of the flyaway sculpture from Martha Hopkins, which will be placed at the H.L. Sonny Callahan Airport. Donor to have Fairhope Ironworks powder coat paint sculpture chrome color with holes drilled to bolt into the cement column. The city will provide the cement column, installation, maintenance, and liability protection.
So moved.
Got a motion
Second?
and a second? Any discussion?
Just one simple question. How big is this? I mean, I'm trying to get a feel for it. Is this like, I mean, and I'm gonna vote for it, but
No.
is it 10 feet? Is it 4 feet? I mean, I'm looking. I see a picture of it. I don't see any dimensions. I'm just curious. While we're on it. Have you got the
I saw it in
dimensions?
emails and I can't remember.
I never saw dimensions, but
It's pretty cool. I just don't know how big it is.
it's probably significant. How big is our eagle out there? It sits on concrete.
3 feet by 4 feet. Not counting the pedestal.
Yeah, probably something of that nature.
Yeah, that's what I was figuring. It's not that important.
Yeah.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Item number 26, this is the item that was added, and item number 26 is a resolution that the city of Fairhope approves the procurement of the Surumi duplex cutter package for the wastewater department to be purchased from J.H. Wright and Associates. The cutter package equipment is exempt from formal bidding per Code of Alabama, not to exceed total cost of $28,190. This is for the temporary lift station out by Publix in 104. And we discussed this in work session. Any questions for Jason on this, or someone like to make a motion?
That's something, if once it's temporary, is it replaced? Will it be something that you can put on the shelf and use somewhere else if necessary? Okay.
All right,
I'll make a motion for the temporary lift at 104.
I'll second.
all right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Just assumed your silence meant you were opposed. So.
Not
All
at
right,
all.
okay. All right, motion passes. Next item, item 26 is public participation. The floor is open. If you wish to address the council about any of the agenda items or anything else, you've got 3 minutes. Come forward, give your name and address. All right, seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close the floor for public participation, and I'm going to read a letter from our city attorney because we do have proposed executive session. So item number 27 is recommended executive session to discuss consideration the city is willing to offer or accept when considering the purchase, sale, exchange, lease, or market value of real property, and discuss pending and potential litigation. And this letter, it says, as city attorney, I, Marcus McDowell, hereby request that the city of Fairhope council go into executive session based on Alabama code to discuss the consideration the city is willing to offer or accept when considering the purchase, sale, exchange, lease, or market value of real property. The discussions could have a detrimental effect upon the competitive position of the city in the negotiations if the matter was discussed in public. As city attorney, I hereby request the city council of the city of Fairhope rise from regular city council meeting on Monday, April 11th, 2022, and go into executive session. The city council shall be in executive session for approximately 60 minutes. At the end of the executive session, the city council shall return to the city council chambers to resume regularly scheduled council meeting. Do you anticipate us taking action at that time? No. Okay. All right. Council, would someone like to
I'll
make
move
a
to go into
motion?
executive session.
Got a motion
Second.
and a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Backing in. Got a second?
Let's wait on Corey, shall we? Yeah, I got a second. I'll second it.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 All right, we're out of here. Corey left already.